sorry, but I want to start because everything will be out of order if we wait until anyone else is coming. Welcome, bem-vindo in Portuguese. I want, in Czech it is dobrý den. That one I know. Unfortunately, I have to leave 5 minutes to look for something, but I will present to you Rudīte. She is a midwife from Latvia. She worked out a lot of things in her country. I can say she is a birth activist, and then I think I said it all. Rudīte.
Thank you. May I sit while I present, or would it be better for you if I would be standing?
Sitting.
No. And well, can you hear me now better? Is it? Who? You can hear now?
It's off. It's not on.
It is on. It is on. Yes. So, you are invited to sit in the first rows, and you can leave at any time if you find there could be more interesting topics. So, it's like in church. Everybody comes and sits in the back in order to be in a safe place. So I will try to tell you in short, how we started to make things better, and tell you in short how it is today. But still we have many things to work with. Oh yes, that's the first one. I hope everybody knows now where Latvia is, rather far up in the north. And we had a good birth culture until it was destroyed. I'm not going to tell you details, but it was a very good world that was in order before the Soviet occupation. People from countries who have never experienced occupation for 50 years could not imagine what it has meant. I'm not going back into history. You can read about it. It was suppression, violence. Every good organization was destroyed. All people had just to listen to what the party and their leaders say, and otherwise they were persecuted. But then, when our independence was renewed, so this is just a short example on how people in our country looked in ancient times about birth and also about death. It's a common picture, and people were aware that it's not a small body coming out of a big body, but that there is a soul, and that life is more than what we can see with our own eyes. When I moved back to my country of origin in '97, the process started earlier. This is the picture I had in mind. I knew what I would find. I had no illusions about the state of birth and of society overall. So I'm not the only one. I never could have done all this work by myself. You know it. There needs to be a kind of motor, somebody who starts, but there needs to be a community to achieve something. There's a famous sociologist in the States. I'm sorry I cannot tell you his name, but he has found out that if 100 people are convinced about a good issue, about that they have something that they want to promote, then society will take it, and it will become, it will be great and will grow. This is my colleague who was the first brave one to start to attend home births after she had been abroad after '91, when the independence was renewed and the borders were open and people were allowed to travel. Can you imagine that in earlier times everybody who wanted to go abroad needed to apply for a visa to leave his or her own country? That was a big prison. they lived in. So, and also the knowledge that was accessible was very limited and directed by the center in Moscow, and also medical knowledge and knowledge about obstetrics was the only right one coming from Moscow. So Astrida left her position or was expelled of her position in the big maternity hospital, and media were aware that something new is happening, and colleagues some were supporting her and many were despising her because she dared to do something that nobody had done before, not being obedient anymore. But then she was the first one, but we joined her, several of us, and we were a group of peers wanting all the same thing. And the best was that women became aware that the borders of what they are allowed, what is possible, are also to be broken down by themselves. They understood that there is no according legislation according to what they need, but they just must do and follow their hearts and choose to birth naturally and at home, and that's what they did. And then we connected and we were a joint force, and so there started real growth. And then there came this big opportunity to join the EU as real members, and our state organization tried to prevent us from contacts, but it was a very nice story at the ICM Congress in Vienna. We were some 3 or 4 colleagues from Latvia, and our president of the Midwives Association of that time was taking part in a workshop, and there was a Swedish midwife, and she looked at her name label and said, "Oh, do you know that I'm coming to your country to access midwifery before we enter the EU?" And of course we didn't know. The authorities wanted to get this thing in order, to behind closed doors, to tell that we are very on the level of the EU, which is absolutely not true until these days. Education lacks many things. So, but it should happen that we should meet, and we very fast organized a group of midwives to meet the EU specialists who were sent to find out on what level midwifery in Latvia is. And this was a helpful start, and also their fundings, which our state government needed to apply. All these, the EU directives helped us to gain more freedom of practice. It was implemented in the law of maternity care, and we had a possibility to have this definition of attended home birth, of planned home birth. If you listened to Kenneth before, it is important not to talk just about home births, birth that happen by chance at home, but planned home birth. That means women know what they choose. They know that they are themselves going to be responsible and need to give birth without any anesthetics and other drugs, and that they will have an experienced midwife caring for them and their babies. So we have accessed this gradual growth in expanding the scope of midwifery practice. We are drawing nearer to the full scope of a family midwife, and we can take part in education processes, sometimes in schools, sometimes even in kindergartens and parents groups, and we can offer different kinds of care. But the sad thing is, something has changed in the hospitals, inside hospitals. Of course, we know that all the time, even if we would have 20% of home births, which would be just wonderful, now we are about 1%, but still growing. Then the rest, 80%, would give birth in hospitals. So the main goal is to humanize birth in hospitals, and there have been changes towards this goal, but not enough, of course. But still, we know, and this was my main aim, to just work, do my midwife's work, and let the people experience and let them see what is possible and what the qualities, what the kind of midwifery is. And it is a very attached, one-to-one, very personal midwifery. I have sometimes heard this saying that really professional caregivers are not attached to the persons they care for, but it is not possible to offer really spiritual care, because there is a spirit, there is a soul, it's not a body only. And so we need to see the whole person and connect for a while with the person to find out what she needs and to find out where she is and meet her there, and not want her to come to the place, maybe the highly educated place where we are. This is one of my best colleagues who founded the first family health center. We could also say the first midwives practice, because most of us home birth midwives take care for pregnant women in the capital city, Riga, in this practice. You must know that half of our population lives in Riga, the city, and only the other half in the countryside, although we have very beautiful nature, but this is how it is. This is the first birth house founded by my colleague Aya, who was formerly a hospital midwife, and she's the one who tries still all the time be with one foot in the hospital and with one foot in her birth house, but she does good work. And this is the entrance to the birth house. I did organize in the project house of the family cradle, and the very beautiful and special tub we have here is a tub that is very deep, and you can see on the right side the first birth taking place. The interior, as you can notice, was not completed yet, but I was proud and happy and grateful that it was the grandson of my sister who was being born there. And it was a long birth from Friday to Sunday morning, but they succeeded and were happy and very well used the deep immersion tub. This place shall be, and has already started to be, we are building it since 10 years, a place for birth in this maternity center. And for education, we have several courses and seminars for midwives, for example with Cornelia Enning about water births. We have had from the Netherlands Thea van Toel teaching Rebozo courses, and Elizabeth Davison, so on. This is what we plan to do, to offer education for midwives. Not only plan, we have started it already. That is not accessible in the formal education in our country. And also there will be soon completed a shelter house for neglected pregnant girls and young mothers, mostly teenage girls. I have worked in a place like that for 4 years before starting this project, and the youngest girl there was 12 years old. So this is a big problem. We have still as many abortions as live birth. I don't think, I don't mean natural abortions, miscarriages, but done after a so-called decision. But the decision is often the only way that young girls see how they can solve their situation. And I strongly believe and have experienced that to end one other person's life is not a solution. The small baby goes back to where it has come from. but to let death enter in one's life leave its footprints. And so we want to offer help, and it is possible. We have had good experiences in this other mother and child home. And I know for sure it is not possible to change the whole world. We hear on the news and through the media so many bad things that happen all the time. We know more of them than we did before when there weren't these mass media. And then we maybe can think, oh, it doesn't matter what I can do or I can't do. But I just would like to encourage everybody. Small steps can lead to bigger things, to important things, and we can create places that are islands for people. If we can't change the whole country or the whole continent, we can still have small islands of peace. And that's what is possible, and this is a good start. So, this was in short. If anybody has any special questions, wants to know more, if we have time, I don't know how it has proceeded.
If there is a one burning question for Rudīte, otherwise we will have discussion after the 3 presentations.
And if anybody of you is interested to know more, I have also a script that is much, much longer than these slides, and I can send it to you by email if you give me your email addresses. Thank you for your attention.
Now I will present Henny Jonkers. She was a midwife for 20 years in France, presenting the situation in France. Nowadays she's living in Belgium.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. So, no? Can you hear me, sir? Yeah, now it's okay. Okay, thank you. I tried to read it because I give the text to the translators, but you can stop me if something's wrong with my English, okay? So, I'm Henny Jonkers. I'm working as an independent midwife in France, and I wanted to talk to you about the situation of home birth in France. Just about the country, it's quite a big country regarding to others in Europe, in the middle, 65 millions of people and over 800 millions of births, so it's quite a lot. Fertility rate is quite high for Western Europe also, nearly 2. For the births, cesarean section rate about 21%, about 11% planned cesarean section rate, induction 22%, epidurals 81%, episiotomy still 45%, and breastfeeding immediately after birth about 60%. So this gives you the context of our country. In France, delivery takes place in healthcare facilities on the forefront of modern technologies that integrate midwives in obstetric teams, among others, with obstetricians, pediatricians, and anesthetists. Midwifery is a medical profession, and as such, it has a council of order, a code of ethics, and also it's subject to the code of public health. A large reform took place in our studies, the last one in 2002, to access the training of midwives, students must, as well as doctors, pharmacists and dentists, have validated a classifying examination after a common first year on medical university. Actually, it takes 5 years to train as a midwife. No nurse midwives in France, neither common training with nurses. The French Code of Public Health determines our profession as medical with elective skills. The practice of midwives officially includes acts necessary for diagnosis and monitoring of pregnancy, childbirth preparation classes, supervision and practice of delivery, and postnatal care in terms of mother and child. Recently added skills, consultation for contraception and gynecological prevention. It's also provided that the midwife addresses the women to a doctor in case of pathology. But I think that's nearly all over the world like that. So our skills, the numbers. Actually, over 21,000 midwives in France, and as you see, a major part of them, they're working in hospital settings. Only 3,400 working as independent midwives, but nearly nobody attends home births in this one. 98% are women. Although midwives perform 2/3 of all births in hospital settings, they're covering virtually all births without complication. They work more or less under the supervision of obstetricians. Since the perinatal decrees in 1998, the willingness of French government to reduce medicalization of childbirth is affirmed. The perinatal plan 2004-2008 recommended establishment of midwifery-led birth centers and reaffirmed the possibility for independent midwives to have access to technical platforms in public hospitals. It further noticed a real demand for delivery at home. Reality is different. Since 1999, even on government level, we discussed the possibility of opening these birth centers. This year, some progress was made, but even now, we are far from realization. Although over 20 years, a law allows the access, very few maternity hospitals open the platforms to independent midwives, and even if they do, conditions are very restrictive. On the other hand, the public health policy led to restructure the actual hospital services. Small maternity units are closed one after the other with the aim of centralizing childbirth in large structures. In my hometown is a typical example of that. There were 4 small maternity services. Now there's only 1 left, so women, they don't have any choice anymore so where they want to give birth. Professionals poorly adapted to these changes. One of the results was a significant increase in medicalization and monitoring of management of birth, over 70% of epidurals and more than 20% of cesarean sections, and an increasing level of episiotomies. Even if a wide range of facilities are offered in these settings, often women report that they feel lost and they complain about inhuman, anonymous care. So some parents, they ask for other kinds of birth care, global support, including home births. In France, no section of the public code of health clearly mentions home births, nor for prohibiting, nor to regulate. Furthermore, according to the Code of Public Health, this practice complies with the principle of free choice of practitioners for the patients. Each year, about 2,000 of the 800,000 births recorded by health insurance occur outside hospital settings. At least half of them are planned home births attended by registered midwives. All over the country, midwives willing to provide global support to parents attend home births if a technical platform is not available or if parents make the choice, but nobody really knows about them. Several groups, professionals or users, try to collect information among these midwives, but none of those are exhaustive. The same problem exists to work on guidelines for physiological birth. Often few midwives practicing home births participate. National Association of Independent Midwives, ANSFL, you see, tried for more than 10 years to promote midwives to register their records in a national data bank, the ODIPOG. Since 2010, this registration could be done online, anonymous, and it contains the same items as maternity hospitals. So finally, we could compare our data to the much larger ones. Until now, we had 900 records registered by 36 midwives for those last years. But unfortunately, independent midwives meet a lot of obstacles in our country. Few salaried midwives are in favor of home births or technical platforms for independent colleagues, even less than doctors. Collaboration with hospital settings or transfer during labor, for instance, is often very poor. Some of our colleagues are on the front line to injure home birth midwives and parents, as well as others. Sometimes students are even forbidden to come to with us on home births. Whenever the teachers agree, they come to our workplace. So even if midwives are very carefully, very professional, very evidence-based, very restrictive in accepting home births, several got mixed up in legal procedures. The law obliges us since 2002 to contract a liability insurance. Otherwise, we could be sent with a fine of 45,000 euros and be prohibited to exercise. Without insurance, in case of problems, the midwife will take on damages to extend to her properties. But actually, no insurance company will cover home births for affordable prices. The last offer we got, 22,000 euros for a year, since a midwifery-led birth is paid 372 by insurance. In 2002, when this law was adopted, several colleagues stopped their home birth activity. Since then, little by little, they start again, or others take their place, and often young ones trained abroad. Just try to find why. For the affairs, even if the Board of Council, National Council of Midwives, affirmed in public that they wouldn't charge home birth midwives solely on the ground of lack of insurance, others use this to undermine the position of home birth practice. Actually, at least 5 independent midwives are in court because of affairs in relation to a home birth. 2 for reasons as simple as communication problems while transferring mother and children who are in perfect health today. 4 out of 5, they were sentenced in first proceeding with withdrawal of authorization to practice. 1 temporary and 3 definitive. And 1 was confirmed by Court of Appeal, and 3 they're still running on national level. So this is really a big problem for our colleagues, because definite withdrawal, that means no possibility to work as a midwife at all. Every 3 years an re-examination can be asked, but it's the same court as in first proceeding. So it's very difficult for midwives to get back their license. Nothing motivates home birth midwives to promote their activity outside directly concerned couples. Few people know about our art, invisible, untouchable, but also not recognized. In June 2013, the National Council of Midwives, following a request by the Ministry of Health, tried to they were asked to, sorry, I start again. In June 2013, the National Council of Midwives, following a request by the Ministry of Health, tried to invent a practice of home birth and insurance status of practitioners. They reminded midwives of legal framework. This initiative raised a panic and rebellion among midwives and parents. At the national level, we work with users associations, with midwifery unions and associations to find a solution to this inconsistency. The Board of National Council participates in this research, especially since they want to promote birth centers to solve the problem of unemployment amongst young midwives. So they don't want to defend home births at all. They just want all women to give birth in birth centers and hospitals everywhere, but not outside of that. The major insurance companies, they were met, but with no success. Too much under control of public opinion and the major opinion of doctors in favor of medicalization of birth. One of the ideas was to write amongst midwives recommendations for good practice of physiological birth and to have them approved by the health authorities. In December 2013, a group, Agir Ensemble, to act together, was funded, where midwives practicing or not home births exchange actions and try to support each other. Parents, they created a group of discussion and to support. We have the CIAN, Federation of National Associations of Birth Users, regularly comments the results of their ongoing satisfaction inquiry on birth experience. It's quite a big inquiry. They got over 29,000 answers from parents, and this gives really another light on what happens really in births in France, because we have got some official statistics and they really give some other report on it. It's really important to work together with them, and they really joined us in this movement to defend home births and autonomous midwifery. You can have a look on the enquête if you want. I mentioned it. Our association and our union, the union I make place of, we are currently funding a lawsuit to expose the problem of insurance premiums. Our lawyers, they try to show the discrimination, the discriminatory nature of premiums for midwives, which prevent us to exist parents legally. On the other hand, midwives must be available day and night, and there's no financial recognition for standby duty. In our rural area, it's difficult to fund a group of practice because there's not enough demands for 2 midwives in a reasonable perimeter. Actually, my nearest colleagues, they're about 1.5 hours away, so if I should call them if I'm not there, it's quite difficult to work together. Then social insurance refunds our acts, but they refuse to assess the true value of time and responsibility they require. Independent midwives struggle constantly to continue to provide global support in pregnancy and childhood for couples which are increasingly in demand. Too often, women who couldn't find a midwife for their home birth decide to stay home alone without assistance of a professional. In hospital settings, our colleagues, they struggle to cope with women they hardly know without the opportunity to do much about this. And this results in sorrowful situation of misunderstanding and feed the number of requests for home births at all, or for global support after all. Therefore, we try to share our vision of midwifery in health organization on national level in collaboration with the users associations. We try to share our practice of high quality physiological birth care with colleagues and students. We are aware that this knowledge may be lost in less than one generation if the midwives exercise only in structures with obstetricians supervising constantly. I think this is a very important issue to keep in mind. The will to give birth at home should be respected while maintaining the required quality of care and patient safety. Foreign studies have emphasized the importance of planning, risk assessment and qualification of professionals practicing home births. In France, no national survey documents activity of birth at home, attended or not by a health professional. This helps to maintain a kind of nebula which benefits neither the users nor us health professionals. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any hot questions? So I can introduce myself. My name is Zwart. I'm from the Netherlands and now working in Portugal. Unfortunately, my presentation got lost, so I had to improvise now. So I will speak out of my heart and show you some pictures of home birth and something about this one. I can say for the same thing as she told from France, that it's the same in Portugal. Midwives, even the name does not exist anymore. It are specialized nurses, and being a nurse, they are supervised by doctors. And then they say, we work independent in hospital setting. There's no doctor in the room when we attend birth. But then I asked, where is your midwifery protocol? And they said, we don't have it. So what you do is having the right hand enlarged of the obstetrician and tell yourself you're an independent midwife, which of course is different. The problem is everyone is very well educated. They are all masters. They take 8 years of education to become a midwife. So if you ask these women to rebellion against a system in which 99% of women give birth, what do you expect? They are young women, they have a mortgage on the house, they want to become mothers, and now you ask them to put this all at risk, to be a rebellion, to be a birth activist? Come on, be realistic. They want to earn a buck too, so they submit to the system. That was the idea till 2004. Then an organization of consumers started. It was HUMPAR, to humanize birth. And we had an international conference, and we started to make workshops to make awareness. Like we did here in the Czech Republic since 1994, we started 10 years later in Portugal. The professionals asked me to come in and to help them make the change. But change is not more of what existed. You have to fight against. And that was a problem. Because it works. Okay, get it. It doesn't. No, you see? Then you have to get up with my, yes, this one it has. With my talking. So 2004, we started to have awareness, and the professionals up till now, they say we do it the Portuguese way, which means 1 step ahead, 2 steps backwards, then half step forward, and so you go on and on in the last 10 years. But I was there, and I never questioned in which area I should teach. So I was also at at meetings which were on ecological environment, about ecological way of life. And so I always talked about normal birth, because that's ecological too. And so that started in 2005, and then in 2006 a woman called me and she said, well, I need a midwife and I can't find any in Portugal. So, and I asked my husband, and so she called me and she said, I need a midwife. And I said to my husband, but I was not going to Portugal to do practice. I did already over 30 years. What should I do? So, yeah, you have to do the walk if you do the talk. So, Mati, here next to me, she was one of the women that said to me, well, I need a midwife. So, there you go. And then you have Portugal, which is about, wait, not that fast. Here. How can I stop it? No, let it run, doesn't matter. Portugal is about 800 kilometers. And then you have the Azores and you have Madeira. So you go like crazy from up to down. I even took a plane for prenatal care from Porto to Faro, made my checkup and went back by plane to Porto in one day, because by car it was not to be done. So the way I'm practicing now in Portugal, it's so different from the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, women won't accept, or the organization won't accept, if a hospital is far distance than an hour. With me, the average distance to a hospital is over 2 hours. So you have to be very aware of low-risk women. Take into account, you know the data, it's 2% of women that have a problem when they stay at home. So you have to do a very good risk assessment. And in this, I made data for 105 births at home. I had a transferal rate of 19.5 and a cesarean section rate of 2.5. So, and if I can, in this way, because this morning they said, do midwives do surveys? Everyone has this data of how they practice, so you can always use this. And so you look back and then you compare it to the Dutch way, and then you see there is not a big difference if you do your good risk assessment. And you have to be into account that women outside the system that chooses home birth are very determined to have home birth. So let's say in the Netherlands I was used to with being in labor for 18 or 20 hours, the woman would say, I want to go to hospital. Or I would say, well, it's time to go to hospital. That's not what I can say in Portugal. Sometimes it takes 3 days and you're there. And sometimes it takes an hour, of course. But I mean, the woman decides when she wants to go to hospital. And if my parameters are okay, I cannot say, well, should we? No, she has to be at the point that she says, I want to. So it's a very eye-opener for me to work in Portugal. After 10 years, you see awareness coming. This year, the only possibility for having a water birth in a public hospital was closed because doctors said, we say so. So the midwives could not say, we want to. The doctor says, we close it. And now we had a petition this year in Portugal, which stated over 4,500 signatures that women say, we have the right to choose. We have the right to give birth instead of delivering babies. Delivering babies or delivering things is for pizza parlors. We give birth. And it's not like taking a tooth out of your cheek. It's a whole procedure. It's a rite of passage. And if you don't do it right, from the moment you give birth, you will have to fund for it for your lifetime. So, can I stop it? Can I alter it? because there are pictures in it. Yes, this is my dream coming true. We open a birth center the 1st of February. And why do we need a birth center instead of home birth in Portugal? Because I want the next generation to have skills to attend normal birth. For instance, Matti in one of the pictures, she lives in Madeira. It takes me 3 weeks to attend one birth. I go to Madeira and I stay there till she is in labor. So that's not the way I can educate the next generation. So unfortunately, I have to say, you have to come to my place. And there you have all the access to normal birth which you need, but you have to come to me. And here you see a very nice picture rate. I don't have childbirth, I don't have nurses attending me, but we have doulas, and the doulas helped very much in Portugal to have the awareness. And it's also very easy because they are not professionals, so they don't need to submit to protocols. They can say what they want. They can be there 24 hours without having any problems with labor unions or whatever. So this is so helpful to have the doulas in the kind of area where you're working now, because they make awareness. And most of the doulas, I have to say, they had a bad outcome for the first birth in hospital. So they are reborn as being a doula and help women to get another experience. Next. Do I get the next? Oh yeah. So here you see a doula giving some massage. And this is Matti. And this is a lady from Israel, because I have to say the first babies that were born were mostly out of Portugal, living in Portugal, being aware of systems that are different. And she's from German. But then they speak, this Matti and Marta. These are the two first that gave birth with me. So the very first year I had 2 births. But if I want now, I can have 10 a month. And so you see that it's spreading the news. I have no website. I have nothing public. This is my colleague working in hospital. So you can see the difference of, and these are my storks in Portugal. They even have they have high places where they give birth, but it's on the highway. So they are not that picky to give birth wherever they want. And I want to, let me see, this is me. And I think this is very nice, showing the place of the midwife. It's not in front of the woman, it's not obstetra, it's by guiding. And so it can be in the back as well. If she's comfortable, she can give birth this way. Can I get out? Okay, let me see. For me, it's important to educate. So as a midwife, you should go out of your system and just thinking of pregnant women and so on. You have to go to the public. And my colleagues in Argentina made a very nice clip. And it was done. It's about the way you give birth, the right to have, the right to be upright, to take the way you want to give birth. So to show how silly it is to put women on their back, they made a clip of a man wanting to pee.
Qué raro, ¿no?
And then
No
they
dejes que
asked
te
him,
acuesten durante el trabajo
you
del
have to
parto
pee like this.
y el nacimiento de
Did you
tu
take
bebé.
a course
Pon en riesgo
to
tu
pee?
salud y la del bebé. Vos podés elegir cómo parir a tu hijo. En cuclillas, sentada, como vos estés cómoda. No dejes que te acuesten. Tenemos derecho.
Ley Nacional 25.929 de Derechos en el Nacimiento. Semana Mundial por el Parto Respetado.
So these are very small, very potent clips They have them on breastfeeding, on clamping the cord, on having the right to choose the way you give birth. So if you show these little things, and they are available on the net, you can make them in any language you want. And you would, for instance, have the supermarket putting it on, or anywhere on someone who gives you some time on television. Just frappe toujours. Tell them this is the way you should think of, that is the way to, and you have the right. For me, that's very important. Women have the right to be women and not walking incubators. Okay, thank you. Do you come to the table, ladies?
Come on.
So, any questions?
Can you hear me? No.
Try again?
Can you hear me now?
No, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm kind of formulating my question. It's an idea. I'm a mother and a birth activist. I'm American, but I live in Amsterdam, and I lived here in the Czech Republic for a long time. And I see myself as a bridge between the two countries and the women in them and the birth communities. My midwife in Holland is an independent midwife, and she recently had her own huge battle with persecution and all of that kind of stuff, because she's one of the best traditional midwives in Holland. And, well, the establishment is afraid of that. There's a long story about her. But she felt a connection to Agnes Gered in Budapest. And 2 years ago, we made a road trip together with Laura and another student midwife who is here speaking tomorrow, Marilyn Faber. So we developed this kind of grassroots outreach project that we'd like to expand. And the Latvian midwife, I'm hearing what she's doing, and it sounds incredible. Like, it's just, you're really having to start from scratch to serve a community of families who want an alternative to birth. In France, you have a situation where you're trying to prevent midwifery from dissolving as a practice. And in Portugal, you're kind of in the middle somehow. You're building a community, and you're working within a system. And it's so interesting to me. And this conference is like our road trip, where we have midwives and activists and interested people able to learn about what's happening in other places. But do you feel that this personal outreach to different countries is important? Like, is our road trip idea something we should continue?
Like that? Like that? Like that? No.
Okay, yes, good.
It's okay, you hear me? I think yes. We should really, for me it's very important to learn about what happens in other countries, because I think so many things, we have so many ideas about what's happening here and there, and then you fall back on the ground when you really hear what's happening in one country. I was trained in France as a midwife, but I come from Holland, so I always had a look at Holland as the big country of home birth and things like that. And then when I discussed it over with my sisters, they gave birth in Holland, or with their girls or friends, you just feel from the inside things are not as you imagine. So I think that's really important for us. Just to have this exchange and to learn about what really happens in other places. So yes, my answer is yes.
Please comment.
I don't need the microphone. I don't think my voice. Oh, for that thing. Okay.
I think it's on.
I'm Suze Jans. I am a midwife from the Netherlands, and I actually work for the Dutch Midwives Organisation. I'll be speaking this afternoon, telling you a bit more about the system in Holland. What you need to understand, the big difference between Holland and all the other countries, and about home birth, is that in Holland, home birth is institutionalized, and that is the big difference. In all your countries, it's part of the periphery. It's still a battle, and it's the midwives with, it's the midwives and the women with vision, with who are fighting for something that they've lost, that are having home births in other countries. That's a very, very, very different situation. We have institutionalized home birth. So our perspective is very different, and that's what you do need to realize. And I do also realize that I think we've lost things. We're working on that. There are a lot of things happening in the Netherlands, but it is a very different starting point, and that is something that you do need to realise. And that is a comment on what you just said about your friends giving birth in the Netherlands. This doesn't only go for the midwives, it's also for the women. Our women are very different than the women that give birth at home that you are looking after. Like the women that Mary looks after, they are women that are determined to have it. They will have their home birth. Our women, well, they will deliver at home, they will deliver it in hospital. They're not, there's only a handful of women that are that determined, that idealistic to have their home birth. So it's a different situation, and the women is different, it's a different population, and therefore the outcomes are also different. Thank you.
I think it's very important, this sisterhood, and if you have a good program, and you can go to the marketplace, and you can give your roadshow wherever where women are, you make just a gathering, and you just not on this pedestal, but just showing sisterhood. That's so important, and the moment you do it, you get all the shit of their birth experience over you. I can tell you. They will go on forever and share all the shit they had. And that's good, because they can air it. And that's why you're a midwife, you're a wise woman. And so, but it's true that the Netherlands has institutionalized midwifery. All the other countries have too. The only difference is that midwives in the Netherlands are still an independent medical professionist. So you have the doctor is a medical person and the midwife. But I have the choice as a midwife to do nothing. No one asked me to do something. If I'm a doctor, I save babies, I do cesareans, I do everything to protect mothers and babies. I'm just sitting there, and I'm a medical profession because I decide this diagnosis, if it can be done or not. But I'm a very easy person, and that's why I would never be a doctor. So sisterhood is very important, and if you speak the talk of any language, go for it, make connections. There are always women in the countries that feel your way, and take your roadshow. It's beautiful.
In the process of developing real midwifery care in Latvia, it has helped us a lot to look at other countries, and especially at the Netherlands, because also to our medical persons in hospitals, it showed there is a system where home birth works. Of course, there were objections. They said, yes, but at every home birth in the Netherlands, there is an ambulance outside waiting for the problems, which is not true. And then they said, yes, but they have very short ways to the next hospital. But this is not true when the traffic is dense. So, few kilometers. Well, so, but this was a big challenge. We are close to most hospitals. Of course, we have a law now.
ambulance, Mary. Come on.
No.
We have implemented that the nearest, the hospital must be reached within 30 minutes, and that's enough.
We have the same regulations in Holland.
And,
Yes.
and all the women live 30 minutes from a hospital?
No, of course not.
So,
So, this is another topic about risk assessment, about several risks and what we see as risks, what are no real risks, what are imagined risks and emotional problems, in fact. But I think it is very important to, as Mary says, to build this sisterhood among women and among midwives, so as not to feel so lonely. A lost community. No, it is the big community throughout the world, and most problems are common in most countries of the world. There is no paradise for midwives. Sometimes when I'm fed up, I say I'm going to New Zealand because I thought there might
work with sheep?
no,
Oh, I
work as a midwife. But of course I could never do this. But yes, it is important to connect, so we have more power. We take some from the energy that others have when we feel, it's maybe not the case, but we have the feeling that we have spent all our energy, and where would we draw the next portion from? And then we can draw from others who are in similar situations and are supporting us. So this community building is a good thing, a good fruit of the media. There are many bad fruits of being connected too much, but this is really good and we should use it more and more.
Any final question? No? Then I think it's a break now, lunch break we have, and there is an, I think there is, let me see. There is the press conference coming on now. So anyone who has something to say, please go to the press conference. Hey, didn't see you yet. And please join, because the press, you know, they go by amounts. So if there are 5 people, they say it's a minor thing. But if we show up and then they are impressed, then perhaps they want to ask more. Right? Have a good lunch.